Welcome to the Business Edge, brought to you by Technologies Now, where we help businesses use AI, automation, and smart client acquisition systems to streamline operations, capture more opportunities, and grow with less friction. So today's episode is part of a broker's perspective, where we talk to real estate leaders about their story, the market, and what it takes to grow in this business. I'm joined today by Rick Kelly of Alta Real Estate in New York City. Rick recently won the Real Estate Board of New York's Deal of the Year. We're certainly going to talk about that. And today we're going to talk about his story and the market. And Rick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David. Glad to be here.
So I want to start at the pinnacle of the recent pinnacle of your award. Tell us about that. That's a fantastic award. Obviously, it takes a lot to earn something like the Deal of the Year. Let's walk us through that, and then we'll get back into your story and how you got here.
Well, I would say New York, just like the song, it says, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. That's kind of the mind belief and the mindset that I think a lot of successful salespeople have. This particular transaction started off with a cold call. It was a dead lead, an expired lead that was off the market. And I was calling as the fifth or the sixth broker that had represented the property. It was I think Compass had it, Sotheby's had it, a few other firms had it. And when I reached out to the owner, it was off the market, and he indicated, after initially asking who I was, what was the name of my firm, what I could do for him. He told me basically that he was going to stick with the same broker, but to stay in touch with him if it doesn't work out. So I just stayed on top of the contact through my CRM, of course. And I reached out to him every 30 days or so with some, updated market stats, et cetera. And then when the time came, at the end of this other gentleman's exclusive, he reached back out to me and said, okay, send me a proposal. So that's kind of how it started. It started, call it with hustle and just follow through and constant contact. And then when he offered me the chance, I jumped at it. And so that began a 1-year adventure, and the story ended happily after a year, almost to the day that I took the listing. And by the time it closed, it was the highest selling resale in Midtown Manhattan since COVID. So it was a very big deal, not just for the building, but also for the market in general. In Midtown Manhattan, just so you know, most of the big money goes to new developments, but a lot of the resales, people that are 5, 10, 15, 20 years old, that product moves a lot slower. So it was a big thing. Our asking price at the time we sold it was $7 million, and we got almost 6, 7 for it. So it was pretty good performance.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is an exceptional performance. So what was the secret to that? I mean, obviously, to get the deal yourself, you had to stay on top of it and hustle. It's the competition is pretty remarkable from what I understand.
It's pretty remarkable. I would say getting the business was obviously just follow through, hustle, picking up the phone and calling people. That's how I got the business. But getting the deal, the guy who represented the buyer on the transaction was actually the second broker. The people surfaced initially. This was in the theater district of Manhattan. So this is where a lot of Broadway, a lot of show business people are. And they were producers producers of very successful Broadway shows. And they had surfaced early. They had surfaced early on, and then it disappeared. And they came back around in the second half of my exclusive. It was a 1-year agreement, and then they resurfaced again, but with the second broker. So it was kind of interesting. But the guy that ended up closing the deal on the buyer side was a veteran broker and one of the top brokers in the city. And it was a guy named Jeremy Stein. He works for Sotheby's. So long story short, was getting it was just hustle and determination, and selling it was a combination of creativity. There were many moving parts to the sale, but at the end of the day, it was I would just say it was a little bit of luck. The same people came back around. They had a better or more experienced broker. And then I just knew if I didn't sell it for this guy, probably nobody would sell it because I believed in my skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations again on that, and well earned award. So that's exciting. So let's go back in time then. And we already started with this pinnacle moment here, and maybe not pinnacle for you, but for us, from the outside saying that's amazing from a broker's perspective.
Sure.
Let's go back in time. When you were in 8th grade, did you expect to be in real estate, Rick?
Not at all. Not at all. I dreamed of being in music, and I spent a lot of my life devoted exclusively to music, and that's kind of the career path that I was on. And then 20 years ago, I had a record deal with a major a record company that fell apart. And at that time, I had my parents were getting divorced. My sister got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. There are a lot of things going on, and
Oh
I
wow.
couldn't just be like the guy, hanging out in his basement studio apartment, singing his songs on a guitar and not making any money. I'm like, I got to make some money. So I was bartending at a well known restaurant at that time, and a guy came in. I think he was a real estate broker, and I was just asking him what he did for a living. He seemed pretty
Mhm.
cool, pretty chill, and he told me, I think at that time he had made $5 or $6,000 doing it was a rental or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I could retire.
That's a
Cause,
ton of money,
cause you know,
right?
when you're a bartender, 5,000 bucks is a lot.
Right.
So that's how I got interested. I was like, I've got to do something different in my life because, as you know, sometimes it's not about your ability to climb the ladder. The question is the ladder on the right wall? And I think I
Yes.
recognized that I was about as high as I could get on that bartender ladder, but it was against the wrong wall. So
Yes, and that's a good little lesson there. Is your ladder on the right wall? I mean, I love that analogy, if that's the right term for it. That is fantastic. So, actually, music. What kind of music do you like to play? Like to sing? Let's hear it.
mm,
You want to sing a few
well,
bars for us here?
I might. What
All
time is
right.
it? Is
You,
it
you
after
can wor-
5?
you can warm up to that idea. It's all right.
You
You're not on
can
the spot.
if your listeners actually go to Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, you can look me up. It's Rick Kelly. And I've had a good amount of success as a songwriter. And I had, a decent amount of success on my initial album, which is actually this year, it's 10 years old. But I went to college in Nashville, Tennessee, and was my whole life was dedicated to music. So I went to college for business administration, but I spent almost the entire time in college in the recording studio. So my stuff would be categorized as, I guess, singer songwriter. On the melodic side, if people ask you who's your favorite Beatle, I love John Lennon, but I always choose Paul McCartney because I'm more of the melody guy. So that's kind of and then as a
Ah,
songwriter, I've had a few number one hits around the world. Unfortunately, nothing in America yet, but you can check me out. Again, I would say a good starting point is just go to Spotify or iTunes and listen to some of the stuff I've done there.
awesome. I will definitely check that out. So that's fun. So you're multi-talented.
Yep.
Obviously, you're
Well,
good at real estate. You're good at sales. You're good at working with people. And I don't know, was that always the case when you were in eighth? I'm back to 8th grade. I'm not going to harp on this too much, but when you're in 8th grade, were you playing music? Were you writing? Were you in band? I mean,
I
have
think I was
a start there.
I would say I was like singer-songwriter. My parents had me doing like arts and crafts fairs on the weekend. I'd put my strap on and go play my acoustic guitar and sing,
Oh yeah.
around the Tampa Bay area, which is where I'm from. And then as I got older, I didn't get bigger, unfortunately, until I went to college. So when I was in college, it was like I had a huge growth spurt, and I went from like 5'2" or 5'1" to 5'10". When I was in high school, I actually wrestled at 97 pounds, so I was very
Oh my
small.
gosh.
Yeah, I was a
Wow.
small
Yes.
guy. So if you want to know what I was doing in 8th grade, I was probably getting the hell beat out of me. Probably.
That's probably it. No longer, Rick. Now you're beating
That's
everybody up
it.
on the real estate
That's
front
it.
as well
That's
with,
it.
you know, winning awards. So that's pretty
That's
exciting.
right.
So Tampa, you went to school in Nashville, and why New York City?
Man, when I was in Nashville, even though I was very talented and surrounded by a lot of amazing musicians at that time, Taylor Swift hadn't moved there yet. It wasn't, Shania Twain wasn't. I mean, Shania Twain was about as pop as that got. So Nashville hadn't really turned uber cool or uber hip yet, and you had to, if you were going to make any waves in that town, you had to be country, and just country was not my thing. So I moved to New York City because I was like, oh my God, that's where like, Billy Joel were and Madonna and all these very
Right.
famous singer-songwriters, and so I just for me, I also when I was a kid, I watched all these movies about New York City, as a lot of people do around the world. I'm like, "I wanna be there. That's where all the action is," right? So
Right.
so I went because I just something in my heart says, "You're gonna make it there." So, that's why I can in New York City. The joke is I went from, from Florida, so I said I went from the sticks to the Hicks to the Knicks. So
Yes. Yes. I've
and
seen
you
that.
can actually say Knicks these days because at the time of this taping, they are heading to the finals at the NBA after
Yes.
27 years. So
The city has to be very excited. No question about it.
very excited. You see T-shirts and hats everywhere.
Yeah, nice. That feels good. That feels good to be
Yeah,
part of the winning team, right? So
yeah,
that's
it
super
does.
exciting. All right, well, let's pivot back into real estate. So tell us the type of real estate that you focus on, and how you chose that, and we'll dig in a little deeper there.
We do, your garden variety residential real estate, which in New York City means condos, townhouses, and co-ops. Co-ops are a different form of ownership, but it's essentially apartment living. And we service all of Manhattan, nearby Brooklyn, which includes areas like, Williamsburg, Brooklyn Heights. A lot of those are in movies and stuff these days. And then Long Island City is very close to us, but it's in the Queens side. So that's pretty much it. We do a decent amount of rentals, although not necessarily that's our focus. But in Manhattan, 80% of the
You gotta
marketplace
have
is
that.
rentals.
Right,
So we
right.
handle that, and sometimes our renters today turn into buyers or sellers in the future. So right now we're just shy of 20 agents at the firm and Alter Real Estate, and so this is our fourth year in business, and we're just extremely hungry, trying to grab as much market share as we can. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So how many years have you been in real estate now at this point in time?
22, something like that. Although I can't it's
So,
hard to believe, but yeah, it went by pretty quickly.
so you're just getting started is what you're saying.
Why not?
Yeah,
As long as I have the right hairdresser and the right tailor and the right, gym, I guess I can keep it together just to keep going.
that makes a lot of sense. Interesting. Yes, we have keep ourselves in shape and looking professional and acting professional. So
Yep,
yeah, whatever it takes to keep us sharp here. So how do you approach your business? You said you're doing a lot of leasing because that's just part of the market, of course. What's your ideal client that you're out there that you can serve, and you have your whole firm, right? So you could serve anybody and everybody. But who
correct.
do you like to work with, Rick?
I find that there's a lot of people coming to New York, especially a lot of successful people. They have nice budgets, but they don't know the nuances of the city. So I do like transplants, people moving here from California. I think because I like to really add a lot of value as it relates to why New York City is different than
Mhm.
the other markets. And so I kind of I do enjoy working with people that are successful in their own right, but maybe new to New York City. And then as a firm, again, we handle anything from an inexpensive rental up to an expensive sale. I would say the majority of the clients that we serve are people that are living and working in New York City. We do get a few pied-à-terre buyers and stuff, but believe it or not, less than 5% of all transactions in New York City are to foreigners. There's this misconception that, the Chinese and the Russian and whatever are buying. That's not the
Right.
case. Actually, 95% of the people that buy in New York City are actually domestic. And since Facebook and Google, Google owns 3 or 4 blocks worth of commercial real estate in Chelsea. Since they moved to the city many years ago, there's actually has a nice big belt of technology people. So that brings in some people from the West Coast. And because of that, you just have a lot of domestic people with a lot of resources that are moving here that want to be a part of the New York story and be exciting. And as a real estate professional, what's cool about New York is since you're tied into some very interesting things, very interesting people, number one, and then very interesting real estate, number two. Every day it changes. There's a new building going up here, or they're doing a different exhibition on the High Line, or this whole area of the East River is being transformed into a community beach or whatever it is. I mean, it really is a city that operates 24/7, and I like that part of it. There's always a new restaurant. There's always some new news that affects people. So if you're it's kind of like it's the difference between living in a lagoon where it's slow and quiet and the
Mhm.
waves don't really go up and down very much, or living on a coral reef. This is a coral reef. There's tons of action. The currents are going left and right. There's colorful fish left and right. So Manhattan's a or New York City is a big coral reef, I think.
I like that. I've not heard that type of analogy before. That's really interesting. Yeah, everyone knows that's where the action is. And I've talked to other people in New York City, and their New York centric, conversation. They're like, well, this is pretty much this is the center of the world. If you don't know that, you need to learn it, kind of deal. And
For
I brought
now, it
that up.
is. For now it
Yes,
is. And it's not
I
just the richest city in the world. And it's rich not just because of the money, it's rich because of the diversity. You go from neighborhood to neighborhood, it's
mhm,
vastly different, right? The Lincoln Center is night and day different between that and the Lower East Side, right? There's different people that live there. They have different clothes, different attitudes, different hours. They keep different hours. They eat different kinds of food. It's really interesting. It's literally, I think Disney World has It's a Small World, which is all of the nations and like one little
right.
acre. It's
Yep.
kind of like the same thing in Manhattan. So
So it's a small world and a big world in New York City. You have to can't get it all in one little location. It's all spread out. Well, I mean, that's
and very
originally where everybody came in. Yeah.
and very approachable too. I mean, New Yorkers, we might be direct and we might tell you like it is, but we're not going to lie to you. We're going to tell you exactly what we think because we're not shy of saying it. And so, to a lot of people, that's actually refreshing that move here. They're like, well, wherever I stand, I'm going to know it pretty quick with people in New York.
Yes.
And I think in a world where time is money, I think that's quite refreshing.
Yeah, that is refreshing for a lot of people, and very interesting if they're not used to it from the South. Perhaps I don't know. I'm not going to stereotype folks, but no, New York's awesome. So a great client is someone from the Bay Area that's moving out and wants to be in Manhattan, for example.
That's right.
Great, perfect fit. I've heard the nuances of getting into a co-op. You have to know your way around. Obviously you need someone local that knows the markets. You can't just shop like if you're shopping in Denver. Certainly, there's different areas, but sorry, Denver. I love Denver. That's where I'm at. But they're not that different. I mean, in general, right? If you're going to be in a neighborhood, I'm in Broomfield,
True.
Colorado. It's neighborhoods, right? That's what we have here. All Broomfield looks kind of the same. Sorry, Broomfield. I don't mean to be insulting here to my little town, but you go to New York, like you said, everything has a different flavor. People have different hours. They eat different food, and that makes it interesting. So where,
It's a vertical city, and most of the buildings, or a lot of the buildings, are doorman buildings, and which means that in a market like Colorado, for instance, the listing broker will get an agreement with the seller to sell the house. And then a lot of times, as I understand it, the buyers, if they're coming with the buyer's broker, they're giving a code. They unlock a lockbox, and the buyer's broker shows the buyer the listing without the listing broker being there. It's quite different in New York City. We really have to earn everything that we make here because every showing has to be attended by somebody, and normally it's the head of the team, or in my case, if I have a listing, I'm going to do most of the showings. And so you're not just getting a lockbox and moving on. You really are servicing that listing, and you're selling it in person, right? You're the guy that shows up in a suit and a tie or whatever your outfit is, and you have to be like, my God, look at this kitchen, how amazing it is, and wow, look at these
right?
views, and by the way, the staff is amazing. So all of that energy is what sells properties, and people, especially if they have a lot of choices, they are going to buy the property because if they feel comfortable with the listing agent or the guy that showed them, and there's three of the things they're equally okay or excited about, they'll typically go with the one where they have a rapport with the listing broker, or their broker have the rapport with the listing broker. So we really do have the ability to affect the sale in a positive way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is it still? Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's totally different here in Colorado and probably most, standard US, where you get a code and you show them around and they look
Yeah,
around as help walk them through it. But yeah, the listing agent is not present. That's really interesting, and can really affect. I mean, salesmanship obviously makes a difference, regardless of where you go. But
sure.
you not even know your way around. I can't imagine you show up from, again, example, Bay Area coming out, where you got to talk to them, figure out what their budget is, where they want to be, who they want, what they want to be close to. Is it Google, whatever it happens to be, and then figure out your options. So you got to get them educated. I mean, it's got to be a lift, right? If they're going, Bay Area is expensive, certainly, in general.
Sure.
So they're probably not shy
Yeah.
about the prices, maybe. Not
Right.
sure, but knowing your
And
way
only
around, knowing the
about
right
and
niches.
there's less than 10% of all New York City properties have outdoor, space. So you get a lot of people saying, "Oh, and I really want a private terrace," but then when you show them that there's very little of the inventory has those terraces, and a lot of times they're on lower floors, all of a sudden that's
Yeah.
typically that's one of the first things that gets dropped is outdoor space, private outdoor space.
Right. So they're used to it maybe in a lot of places in California, which is
Yeah,
a lot lower, right? I mean, it's not the high rise, it's mid rise maybe
right.
at best. New York City, yeah, vertical. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah,
I mean, that'd be the first thing I think most people be looking for in Colorado is having some outdoor space. And they're used
sure.
to it. And we've got, we're not as dense. You go downtown and yeah, there's
We
terraces down there too.
we work around that by we say, well, you can get a country house for the weekend, or you can live close to the
Yes.
or you can live close to the park,
Or right. It's an
or
yeah.
you can live close to the park, or both. So,
Yeah, exactly. Or both. And I can help you with that.
as a matter of fact.
As a matter of fact, yes. Awesome. So, tell us about the market. What's going on in New York City in the market that you serve?
Man, it is on fire. This is spring 2026, the time that we're talking. And last week, there was 250, 60 contracts signed in Manhattan. This week, just this most recent past week, there's 302 contracts signed in Manhattan.
Boom.
It is, and typically this time of year, once you get past Memorial Day, things start to kind of coast down the hill a bit. But right now, this spring is continuing to show a lot of resiliency, and it's across all price segments. Now, for those of your viewers, they may not be, understanding where the Manhattan marketplace is, but still, there's over 60% of the deals are under a million in Manhattan. And then you start to go up from there to, call it 2 to 5 million, 5 to 7 million. But there's activity in all price segments right now. And at the time of this taping, again, we've got an Iran war, we got crazy interest rates, gas is through the roof, but none of that is affecting New York City. It is the world's richest city, and a lot of these people are sitting on crazy amounts of profits from the stock market or dividends or bonuses from Wall Street, et cetera. So there's no shortage of money here. But the interesting thing is we are about 15% below our average historically on where we should be in terms of supply. Like we should be towards
Mhm.
the end of the spring cycle, call it end of June or so. It's 7,500 things for sale. We're only like at 6,600 things for sale right now. So not enough, believe it or not, not enough supply.
Wow. Yeah. No, that can make a difference. You think people are sitting on their low interest rates and just not moving? I know that's the case across the country from what I've
That is
heard.
the that is the case.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So it's going to take what? Obviously a catalyst for them to want to move or, sell their house because of some other they're moving back to the Bay Area, they'll
That's
have
right.
to sell their house or
That's right.
rent it. How is the rental market? Could you literally purchase a property
It's
and
really
cash flow
it's
it?
You can if you buy it for cash, right? But it's
Mhm.
be very difficult if you're getting financing. The rental market, unfortunately, is just extremely tight right now. There's less than a 1% vacancy rate.
Oh my
People
gosh.
are staying where they are because they have no other choices. And unfortunately, it's just driven the rent through the roof. You have one bedroom and let's just say a dorm and one bedroom that used to cost you maybe 25 to $3,500 a square foot in a nice building in a nice area in Manhattan. Now that's costing you 5, 6, $7,000 a month. It's insane.
Ooh.
The rental market is almost doubled. Some of this is due to some very well intentioned legislation. There was an act called the Fair Act, which historically tenants, if they wanted to rent an apartment, they used to have to pay a broker's fee. And in many cases, they'd have to pay both sides. They'd pay the landlord's broker and their own broker if they're working with the broker. It's roughly 15% of your first year's rent. And that was split between the two different brokers. Well, the Fair Act came through and says, now you only have to pay the person that hired you. So what that means is that a lot of these landlords who had not been paying a fee, now they did have to pay a fee, but of course, what they did was they just passed it on
Right, it's in the rent.
in terms of asking rent. So now the rents are through the roof, and nobody can find a way to do much about it. So the housing crisis is real, not just at least in New York City as it relates to to the sales market, which there's an undersupply of housing, but certainly more so in the rental market right now.
So what's gonna happen in the future? What does your crystal ball say?
My crystal ball says it's going to get worse before it gets better. Even if they went out and they built 200,000 residential units, that's not enough for a city like New York City. There's going to have to be some kind of legislative difference than what it is right now. It's just too cumbersome. It's too bureaucratic. There's too many zoning regulations, it should be easier to build in a place like New York City, and it's not easy enough to build right now. There's tons of community groups that can stop a project from going up, and then
Hmm.
quite honestly, in New York City, even though we are the economic engine of New York State, a lot of these decisions happen outside of New York City and Albany
Right.
in the capital, and those people have different priorities than the people here in the city. So unfortunately, as is the case when politicians start yelling at each other, it's the voters and the consumers who pay the price. So right now, I think rental market is going to stay tight, certainly until the interest rates come down into the fives, to where it's going to loosen up some of that inventory and people start to
Hmm.
sell more. And I think on the sales front, if you wanted to, wait for the market to tank when you bought in New York City, then you should have come here in COVID, because it did tank then. But of course, at that point, everybody thought, the world's going to go under, and I can't leave my house without a mask anymore. Of course, now
Hmm. Right.
all of that is in the past, but at the time, that kind of fear meant that there was a lot more sellers than there were buyers, and you could pick some stuff up really cheap during COVID. So I'm not wishing on another health
Yeah. Don't,
catastrophe,
don't
but
don't wish on
but
that,
I would
Rick.
say
Right.
but I would say if you're waiting, don't wait, because I think the rents are going to continue to go up, and at least if you buy something now, you can lock in a price, and then when interest rates come down in a few years, you can refinance and then lower your monthly costs. But I don't see there being any immediate relief, either for the sales market or for the rental market. Right, it's just a place
So
where people want to live. So
yeah. Well, that's totally, it's all about location. Yeah. If you're
yep,
not interested in New York City, there's a lot of other states to go to, but you don't get
yep.
your New York City, and what you need there. Let's do this. Let's take a shift. We are a technology company, and we're not here to talk about technology, but it certainly has affected real estate. You've seen changes in how you use technology over the years. How has that affected, how you do business?
I didn't ever used to have to use a CRM, but I realized if I was going to have a business that did a high volume, in order to properly service all of our clients without relying on sticky pads and writing on the back of your hand, I needed a good
Right.
CRM. So now we use CRM to track all of our conversations with clients, etc. AI certainly is helping to do some things we used to have to do by hand. I can, for instance, as an example, I have a client that wrote a lease. I gave them a basic Real Estate Board of New York condominium lease that they
Mhm.
should use, but then they gave it to their attorney and he chopped it up. And so I threw it into
Right.
Claude and I said, Claude, look at this standard Rebney condo lease and then look at what my client gave me and tell me what are the differences between the two. So I didn't have to read it. And, within a minute or two, it spit me out all the things that are meaningful. And I realized there were not too many meaningful changes. So I got on a phone call with the renter's broker, and I said, "Look, the good news is not that much was changed, and so I think we can move forward. Your side probably is not going to have too many objections, and so I like that kind of part of technology where it can take the
Yes.
mundane, laborsome, time-intensive
Mhm.
things that are
Mhm.
not necessarily, they don't have to be done the long way, and make them be done the short way. So I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I know it's changed efficiency for people. In that example, that's a perfect example. You don't want to read through and compare and figure out how you're going to redline it yourself when you can have, something
Yeah,
intelligent read it just like that, right? I mean, it's just done, and it's become very, very accurate now. That's, always talk to your broker or attorney before enter in a contract, even if you put it through Claude or Chat GPT. It's not considered legal advice. I didn't mean to get into a disclaimer there, but that seemed automatic for me because that is absolutely the case. Is still not legal advice as far
that's
as I
right.
go. And speaking of advice, one of the questions I like to ask is, what advice would you give a younger Rick at this point in time? Would you have changed anything, or would you given him different direction?
I have never been a guy to beat my breast and, put my face and say, look how great I am. Look at a great job I did. I would say I've never been the kind of guy that calls my clients every 3 months just to say how you're doing. I think once I sold them a house or an apartment, I'm like, I need to let them breathe a little bit, right? So I would I, I
Yes.
would say I would say my a lot of my business, probably 35% is referrals from past clients, but I probably could have gotten that number a lot higher had it been a little bit more involved. But I guess my philosophy was at the time was if I do a great job, they'll call me when the time comes. I'm a little bit more proactive than I used to be on that, but I would say that would be if I had to advise my younger self, I would be don't be shy about your performance. Make it something you're proud of, and talk to your past clients more often than you do. Not that I
That
have a
makes
problem
sense.
with new business, but obviously existing or repeat business is a little bit better in terms of quality than going after people that don't know you yet.
Yeah, no question about that. And that's why you have your CRM that you use and that sort of thing. So you have obviously taken steps to let, stay in front of the people so they remember you exist when the time is right,
That's right.
I yeah, that's totally it. So, I'm gonna ask about one more piece of advice. What advice do you give a broker or a agent, coming into real estate at this point in time? What do you tell them? What's the key to success, Rick?
Well, the key to success is constant communication with people and to be talking real estate. So, as my real estate coach told me, he said there's two kinds of equity. There's sweat equity and then there's check equity. If you don't have the money or the resources to give check equity, you have to use sweat equity, which means you have to talk to people. You have to attend open houses. You have to pick up the phone and call strangers. You have to change yourself and your energy in order for your world to change. The idea that the world is going to change without you also changing, it's just not going to happen. So you have to constantly be uncomfortable in sales. If you're uncomfortable in sales, that means you're making money. Right. If you're completely comfortable, 100% somebody's taking your lunch across town. If you're not on offense, right, you're losing in the sales game. So I especially in a town like New York City, I can't speak for other markets, but there are 25, 30,000 trades over all the five boroughs every year. So if you're not making money, the problem is not the market. The problem is how you're approaching the market and the fact that nobody knows who the hell you are. So you got to get out there and show people what you can do, who you are, and positively affect their lives. There's countless opportunities to do that.
That is awesome. I like that. You actually have to pick up the phone and talk to people. You have to you have to reach out. I think that's
Right.
a lost art in some cases, right? Everyone thinks they
Right.
can.
Or,
Now,
or they think, or they can text their way to
text
success.
it,
No, you can't.
right?
After you already have a relationship, sure, you can text somebody, but certainly don't, if you're texting a girl at the end of the bar asking her if you can buy her a drink, you're not going to win too many words for bravery. You got to put the phone down. You got to go over there and you got to talk to her.
That's a great way to put it. You're not going to win any words for bravery for texting the girl at the end of the bar. I love that. Oh my gosh, that's a great place to wrap up. I love that's fantastic. So, Rick, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate this conversation. This was fantastic. And if someone wants to get a hold of you, where's the best place to reach you?
You could call me. I have a few numbers. My personal cell phone number for business is 917-905-2878. You can always reach me at rick@altarealestate.com. And of course, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc. We're out there.
We're out there. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. This has been a broker's perspective on the business edge, brought to you by Technologies Now. Rick, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
Yes, sir.